I'm following along with Anne Livingston's daily December Art Candy Challenge prompts, and day 5 is to use chartreuse. Chartreuse is a color that shows up in some of my artwork, along with a lot of neon green. I'm not unfamiliar with it. I absolutely love this color. But I wanted to challenge myself today to do a little bit something different. So I started by creating this board on Pinterest. I started pinning anything that had chartreuse in it to get an idea of maybe a composition I might want to try or colors that I might want to use. Typically, when I use chartreuse, I've got like a teal or a blue with it. I'm also liking the purples, and hot pink is another color that I use along with it as well. I'm not sure what could be different other than possibly considering adding in brown to my palette today. And I'm thinking of using brown because I saw that Pantone's color of the year is going to be a brown tone, and I wasn't really thrilled by that. But maybe it's the neutral that I need to add to my palette. First, I am going to play around with mixing my own shade of chartreuse. And then I've got to decide what I want to paint. Am I going to paint a figure? I also saw this beetle here, and I think, now of course it's not going to show it. Why? Let's refresh the page. There it is. I thought about painting a bunch of little beetles. That might be interesting as well. We'll see what I end up doing in just a few moments. So before I start mixing, I pulled out some of the color tools that I have. I've had a few of these for a while, and I just want to start using them a little bit more. This is a book with color mixing recipes. They are sold individually and then as a full bound copy. So in this copy, I have mixing for oil and acrylic, for watercolor, for portraits and landscapes. And again, each of those is sold separately, but I was able to get it as a spiral bound book this way. And they basically just have all of these color mixing recipes all the way through. Let's see if I can pull this a little more into view and move this out of the way. On each section here, if you find the color that you want, it will tell you how much to mix of each color. So this is 10% cadmium light yellow, 65% lemon yellow, 25% cerulean blue, and then a little bit of water. They also then have these charts at the back. So if you wanted to, you could use one of these grid charts here and actually mix directly onto the grid and then scrape the paint into your palette and wipe this off because it is made with acetate. And they have one for acrylic and oil, and they have one for watercolor. And I have not used this a whole lot, but I wanted to start using it more. So I pulled this out and decided these might be a couple of the shades that I want to try for here. I also have this essential color card deck, and these come in a full stack. And so these are all of the shades, for example, of chartreuse. You'll see there's the pure color hue and then each of the tints. And the tints on the back will tell you how much white is added, how much gray, how much black. And they have these little color wheel charts so you can see complementary, split complementary, triadic, analogous, different color combinations that you can use. It's supposed to help you, I guess, pick more quickly when you're trying to choose colors. But I wanted to use these and lay them out and help it choose my paint colors. And then I can also kind of match up and decide the recipes that I want to use. So we'll see if this helps me and gives me a visual way of creating new and more interesting color charts. Because one of the things that I notice with my work is that I tend to get stuck in the same color palettes again and again, and I want to branch out a little bit more. So I've settled on the palette that I want to use. So again, just to sort of explain the cards again, each of them has a number on the back. So chartreuse is color number 2. And then each of the shades and tints from the pure color to different tints has a letter by it, like A, B, C, D, E, F. And some of them, let me find the brown here. Whoops. Some of them show brown with a red cast or brown with a blue cast and the different tints that they have. So you see all the different brown shades that come with this card here. Let's see, where's another brown? So you see here, here's a couple of the other browns. Again, this one is a blue cast and this one was a red cast. So you kind of get an idea for how you might want to mix and match within the palette. I was debating if I wanted to use just these three colors with the Chartreuse and maybe just use darker or lighter shades of the teal and the brown. But I might mix in this shade here. It's fuchsia. And again, we have different tints of the fuchsia here. So these would work, I think, well together. They're not unlike a palette that I would use regularly. I probably would use more of like a hot pink shade of fuchsia with a green and a darker green with it and a teal. The brown is unusual for me in paintings. I'd probably use a black as my neutral. I have those scrapbooked with color palettes like these before. So I'm kind of drawn to this palette. It's not too far away from something that I would use creatively, but just one tiny thing different from what I normally paint with. When I mix colors, I sometimes mix a small portion to start, but if it's a color that I know I want a lot of, rather than just mixing it on the palette, I will use a container and mix a larger portion of that color so I have a good amount of it to use on multiple projects. And that's what I'm going to do today. I have a tendency of saving lots of little containers. Today I'm using a container that I got out of a takeout order we had over one of the weekends, and it had condiments in it, and I thought this is going to be perfect to mix paint into. So I rescued this little container, and I'm kind of thinking it's a great size for paint in general, and I might try to buy some containers like this as well to add to my container collection. Between containers and jars, it's kind of not a good habit to have, I guess. But anyway, that's what I did. I've got this little container. I started with a small portion and I began mixing. I'm going to use the magic of video editing to speed up the mixing process. I'm experimenting with a couple of different formulations here, trying to get the exact mix of Chartreuse that I want to get. And in the end, you'll see it's close to it, but it's not exactly quite like the color on the swatch card that I showed you in the beginning. So I tried a few of the color recipes that I have, including the one from the book. And I worked mostly with the one that Anne Livingston recommended, where she said basically any shade of yellow mixed with a drop of green would work. And I used a phthalo green with a yellow shade, and I've gotten the most success with that mix here. It's the closest to a chartreuse. Not sure it's a true chartreuse, but it's good enough, I guess, for me. The other mixtures seem more of like a spring green, and they're not bad. I will definitely use them. I like the tones of them. I just don't have some of the colors that they were mentioning here. I don't have some of the specific colors like the cadmium yellow light. I had a cadmium yellow. So I used a lemon yellow instead, and I had more success with that. And like this is a benzimidazolone. Am I pronouncing that right? Yellow light. So anyway, I'll be using this shade in my work today, and we'll see how the painting comes out. I decided to also experiment with a painting method I had seen another artist use. I will link to her video on YouTube below. She talks about how she gets color harmony by mixing together all of the colors on her palette to create one mother color. And that mother color is mixed in a very tiny portion into each of the colors she paints with. So that is something I experimented with and tried in this painting. And overall, I do like the results, and I'm going to play with it a little bit more on future paintings. The Inktense pencils are one of my favorite art supplies. You can use them in a variety of ways. They're kind of like a colored pencil, but when you dip them in water or you draw on the paper and then activate them with water, you can get a lot of different effects. So here I have put a tiny amount of water on top of the lid for these, and I am just dipping the pencil in and repetitively dipping it and then drawing with that wet tip onto my sketchbook. What this allows me to do, it's kind of like a push and pull in the layering. If I let it dry like this, it will stay like this. You can reactivate it again, but one of the things that you can do is also to wipe portions away. It's opaque in areas, but you can also come back in with a wet brush and you can pull it down, kind of like you're pulling watercolor. And this makes a kind of wash over the acrylic paint. That just adds to the layering. It adds depth. It makes it more rich. So I use this a lot as a way to add shading to my paintings. With the brush, I can come in and remove a very thin portion, so it leaves kind of a dark outline, while also, again, making kind of a wash over the other paint. So this is a lot of how I layer when I am trying to add depth or tone to my paintings. So this is the completed sketchbook page. I do really love this Chartreuse shade that I created. I'm actually adding it to my book right now. I made a little swatch here, and I am going to write in the recipe that I used to create this. Because this is spiral bound, I could probably add pages There is a punch that is made for scrapbookers that works with spiral bound books like these, where you could add in sheets, and I could probably add in some of the watercolor paper or other paper that I use for swatch testing here. As far as the page itself, again, I really love the Chartreuse shade, and I did like the brown with it. I wasn't so thrilled with the Pantone color this year, but I think I'm going to experiment with adding it into my palette. Having the neutral there just feels really good, and I had forgotten how much I liked doing it. Again, this is a color scheme that I had used when I was scrapbooking that I liked, and maybe I need to draw from some of those color schemes that I love and put them more into my paintings as well. As far as the shading with the Inktense pencil, you can see where it made it a little more intense around here. You can see the shading in her face. I'll put a close-up shot of the finished piece as well, so it's easier for you to see. I also came in with the brown and used it as a wash over some of the brown acrylic paint that I used, and I used some of the green pencil that I had. It's a slightly darker shade, more of a spring green than the Chartreuse is, but I do like the shading that it adds. The only part of the painting I would love to do better are the hands. That's an area that I definitely struggle with. And the only way to do that is to keep drawing hands in my sketchbook. For a long time when I did figure drawing, I avoided putting hands in at all. I would just do, shoulders up. That's it. But starting to put it more in my books, I am seeing improvement in what I'm doing, and that's all you can do. So if you have an area that you're weak in, make sure to include it in your sketchbook or in your everyday work, and you're going to see improvement over time. So in just a moment, I'll share with you a close-up shot of this. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.